Okay, good afternoon, friends. My name is Amanda Miller, and I'm the Associate Director for the National Consortium for Data Science, also known as NCDS. About 650 people from across the country registered for this event, and I would like to thank each and every one of you. These numbers provide a solid reminder that on college campuses from Arizona to Washington, D.C., and Texas to Wisconsin, the field of data science is on fire. Students and faculty are hungry to learn more about this field academically, as we see through the proliferation of data science degree programs within higher education. At NCDS, we strive to connect students with the resources they need to think creatively about the myriad ways to utilize data science platforms, tools, and trainings within a diverse field of careers. Data science is being utilized in journalism, social work, education, public policy, city planning, and more. Beyond academic pursuits, it is our pleasure to introduce today's career panel with this in mind. You are here. Resist the urge to multitask. Your curiosity about the educational and career paths of our panelists will serve you well moving forward. Continue to gather information and gather data, if you will. Listen to these subject matter experts and discover actionable insights for your own professional journey. Now, I'm delighted to introduce you to Dr. Kira Bradford, today's panel moderator. Dr. Bradford is a scientific computing principal investigator and scientific and technical lead. With a background in team science and over 8 years of experience as a scientific and technical communicator and presenter, Dr. Bradford provides expert engagement with researchers to inform software development. Dr. Bradford has been a principal investigator of multiple multi-site projects funded by the National Institutes of Health over the past 4 years. Currently, she is a co-principal investigator and collaborator with the NIH HEAL Data Stewardship Group. The NIH HEAL initiative is an ambitious trans-agency effort to address the opioid and pain management health crisis. As a HEAL steward, Dr. Bradford helps support collaborations among the broad community of researchers, healthcare providers, community leaders, policymakers, and other HEAL allies who can benefit from learning the results of the initiative's research. Kira, we are so happy to have you moderating today. And before we begin, folks, we do have a few housekeeping items. We have disabled Zoom Q&A for attendees. All questions related to the panel should be uploaded to Easy Retro, which is our crowdsourcing Q&A platform. My colleague Jay Shree just shared the link in Zoom chat, and we'll share instructions and the link again during the Q&A portion of the event. We like Easy Retro because it is fairly easy to use, so please feel free to add questions and comments as they arise during the event. We'll leave about 20 minutes at the end of our time together for audience Q&A. If we don't get to your question, we will do our best to address it in takeaway materials. So when we wrap up this afternoon, we're going to be inviting you to share feedback on the event. Please take a moment to tell us how to improve and what content interests you most. Finally, we'll provide additional announcements about some upcoming programs I think you all might be interested in. And my sincere apologies for being so long-winded. I'm excited to get this event started. Dr. Bradford, the stage is yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Amanda. It's good to see you again. And hello to everyone who's attending today's career panel. So to start things off, we're going to do a little bit of an icebreaker. And we're going to go around to each of the panelists who have agreed to join us. Thank you, panelists. And I'm going to ask each of you to share your name, title, and employer info. And then tell us what you wanted to do for a living when you were 10 years old and what you're doing for a living now. I know personally, I was totally right on. When I was 10, I wanted to be a doctor. And now I am a doctor, just not that kind. All right. So starting off, let's have Bradley.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Bradley Dahl. I manage a data science team at Spotify in the ads business unit. And we try to build tools for advertisers to run campaigns with us and measure the impact of those campaigns on the audiences they're trying to reach. When I was 10, I think I alternated between, I guess, wanting to be an astronaut and an archaeologist because both space and dinosaurs are cool, or were cool. So I guess they still are cool. But I think I'm neither of those things today, obviously. But the consistent theme is just wanting to learn stuff, find out new things. And so I went from those aspirations to becoming an academic for a while, and then a data scientist. So the scientist part, I guess, has been a constant theme.
Thank you. All right, Alice.
I'm Alice Fortune Brett. I am a health services researcher. I currently am a manager for Medicare Stars at Blue Cross North Carolina. When I was 10, I wanted to be a doctor. Not surprising. I have stayed healthcare adjacent for the majority of my career. I started at Blue Cross 10 years ago as a data scientist and have been in the healthcare side of the business for the last 5 years.
Excellent. Glad to have you. All right. Uthra, is it Uthra or Uthra?
Uthra, yeah.
Perfect.
So hi, everybody. Uthra Ramanujam. I am a senior director of data science at Liberty Mutual Insurance. If that jingle is running in your head, you got the company right. So it's them. When I was 10, so I lead a data science team that supports Liberty's specialty business. If any of you are wondering what that is, the easiest example I give is somebody has to insure the Eiffel Tower. That's what specialty business is. You're insuring things that you don't really quite think will need insurance. But anyway, that's specialty business for you. When I was 10, I wanted to be a teacher because I absolutely loved being bossy and telling people what to do and making them follow instructions. That dream actually came true about 18 months ago when I was offered 2 teaching positions, and I don't know what got into me. On top of my day job, I teach 2 courses. So I guess I'm living the dream, Kira, just like you.
Congratulations, Uthra. That's incredible. All right. Last but certainly not least, Michael.
Hi, my name is Michael Taff. I'm a data reporter for 2 of the Financial Times specialist publications, Fundfire and Financial Advisor IQ. And a data reporter is similar to a typical journalist, but with an eye towards using public data sets, as well as some proprietary ones to tell the story through charts and interactive graphics. When I was 10, I probably would have told you I wanted to be a marine biologist. I still think marine biology is very cool, but yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you all panelists for joining us here today. So just to remind the folks in the Zoom with us, please click on the link to head on over to the ED Retro if you have questions for the panelists. For now, I'm going to do a set of moderated questions, and then we'll move into what you all would like to know more about from each of these panelists. All right. So I'm going to first ask the question, and then I'll pick on somebody. So be ready. Describe the role of data science in your work on a weekly or monthly basis. What tools do you use? And I'm going to start with Bradley.
Sure. I guess there is no typical month or week. Certainly not week, but maybe not month either. We do use a lot of common tools though. And at Spotify, for the most part, data scientists are product data scientists. So we're embedded in a team that is oriented towards developing and launching products. And there's a product lifecycle that we sync with as a result. So they're at the kind of beginning of a product life cycle. The product doesn't yet exist. It's an idea. So data scientists will work with engineers, product managers, and designers to do kind of opportunity sizing, scoping. We'll do a lot of the tools we'll use. We'll do a lot of write a lot of SQL queries, get a lot of data, do analyses, make visualizations to try to scope out what we can know at that stage, and how we can turn the business problem into a data science problem. From there, we might decide to start developing the product, and then there'll be several, it's like baby steps towards actually building and launching that product. And we will, I guess, scale up the automation of the work that we do in step with that process. So you have some kind of a initial testing where we might actually run more formal experiments, do more formal analyses, and do statistics on that to understand outcomes. We might then eventually scale the product into like an alpha launch where it's live for a limited set of customers. And we might at that point start monitoring at scale, working with engineers, I guess, to put our sort of analytic methods into production, writing kind of monitoring code or developing tools for like dashboards, things like that. And then it's kind of continue to tweak and improve and introduce features from that point, again, using data wrangling, data analysis, visualization, and communication skills and tools.
All right. So for a different perspective on this question, describe the role of data science in your work on a weekly or monthly basis, and what tools do you use? I'd like to turn over to Uthra.
I'm going to say it's quite similar to what Bradley described. The only difference being in a highly regulated industry like insurance, healthcare, banking, there's just a few more stop points, mandatory stop points in that process that Bradley just described, which is, what are you trying to solve? What are you using? Are you allowed to use it? Using this data could introduce bias or adverse action. So there's a little bit more checks along the way that we've got to document. So there's definitely a due diligence component that we owe to our customers. So there's that component. A big thing that I have found very useful when working with a services company, like whether it's in a bank or in an insurance company, is you're dealing with end customers who don't understand data science. In fact, it actually scares them because they think you're here to take their job. So to me, in that sequence of the data science lifecycle, I would say start with communication, empathy, understand what you're trying to solve before you jump into the problem. That I think has proven to be the biggest learning for most people who get into a field like this. A typical day is always looking at data. I call it as staring at data, at least in my role. We're all doing the same thing. It's just that if you're a data science manager, you're asking different questions like, how's my model performing? Did I expect 30% of my model output to be a green versus red? I look at things at a much higher level going, did my 35 models actually move the needle towards greater profitability? And if not, what didn't move the needle? So we're all looking at data. So looking at data wrangling, modeling, monitoring, talking to your customers are what we typically do in a day.
All right. So a shift in direction a little bit. Let's talk to the folks who may be pursuing liberal arts degrees. So Michael, do you have any advice for how to combine their interest in those fields and combine it with data science?
Yeah, for sure. I'm only a couple of years out of graduation, so this is something that I was thinking about not too long ago. And I think there's often a bit of a false choice in the way we think about college majors and career paths, and that if you are a math major, then you are a math person, or if you are an English major, then you are an English person. And I think a lot of folks like me like the stat side, but might also like writing, or might like some other STEM field. And I think, data science is definitely an important thing to cover in college because it will apply to almost any career that you have. So for those interdisciplinary spaces, nailing down a coding language in college, nailing down some of those skill sets to think quantitatively, super important. And no matter what field you end up in, those skills are definitely going to be relevant.
Awesome. What about you, Alice? Can you offer any advice about how to combine a degree in liberal arts with data science?
So I was a history major undergrad, and I feel like it prepared me well, because really what we do as data scientists, especially on the latter end, is we really tell stories with data. And I think that being a history major prepared me by being able to research and pull from a lot of different areas, a lot of different sources to be able to tell that story. And I think that really that's what we do with data. And so I think that I think that the one, being able to tell the story, but then two, also really great, crisp communication. You mentioned that I think that being able to not only generate insights, but communicate that, in particular where we sit in the industry, being able to communicate that side to the business. I think having a liberal arts degree is very beneficial.
I totally agree. I actually collaborate with a PI at RTI who majored in English, and I would have no one else but her write all my proposals and papers for me if I could have the chance. Awesome. All right, next question. What are the top 3 hard skills that applicants should be able to include on their resume in order to be competitive in today's market? All right, let's start with Uthra.
I'm going to go in with the perspective of most of you, I think, on the call who've just graduated and are looking to get that first break. This is actually what I tell my son too, and you won't listen to me for what it's worth. Maybe some of you will listen. Data science, as you all probably know, has become the most popular thing, which means everybody is taking a course somewhere, credited course, non-credited course. You Google, you're going to get 100 million different ways you can build a data science portfolio. So all of that is table stakes. So if I were to list out hard to miss skills or skills you need to have a portfolio, but build a portfolio, curate your portfolio of projects and experiences very intentionally. Don't go build that movie sentiment predictor database or the Twitter database prediction. Everyone has it on their resume. Think outside the box. Look around you. You go to the grocery store, you go order stuff on all the big e-commerce sites. How do you sift through what you want to watch? And on one particular day, what do you want to eat? And how does that impact? I mean, I'm giving you practical examples, right? Be intentional about curating your portfolio. Differentiate yourself from the standpoint of you truly are invested in using the skill. That's why you built this project. More importantly, do it. Speak to how well or how much you struggled to build that project. We want to hear what you struggled with, because that's going to resonate with me, because that's most of what our days are when we're dealing with data. It's a struggle, right? So be genuine, be practical, and more importantly, tell either through your resume or through an interview process, how are you constantly learning? What you knew 6 months ago, or the big things that you learned while you were in school are outdated before you actually land in your first job on your first day. So how are you keeping yourself active? I think those are things that I would look for. And again, I tell this to my son.
I have to admit, you kind of crushed me a little bit when you said the Twitter database analysis, everyone has that on their resume. And I'm like, do they? Well, goodness. All right. Gotta refresh my skills then.
Sorry, we should have practiced this before.
All right. Michael, do you have any alternate perspectives on 3 hard skills that applicants should be able to include?
Yeah, hard skills. I would say don't discount Excel. I think kind of as she mentioned, I mean, not everyone has Excel proficiency on their resume, but that can mean a lot of things. So, and a lot of times I think people do things in R or Python that could be done probably easier in Excel. So don't discount that. Being good at Excel and the basics is important. And I would say, again, just one coding language. I was a stat major at UNC, so my classes were all taught in R, but if you have one down, it's easy to learn a second. And also picking up on something that Uthra mentioned is, if the goal in college is just to learn a coding language, you can do that for free online. There's plenty of resources to go learn R or Python online. The important thing, I think, is being around folks who want to help you learn how to learn those things, because 5 or 10 years from now, maybe R will not be relevant. And so it's important to know how to pick up new skills and having the resources around you and folks around to help you through that. is super important.
Agreed. All right. So we talked about hard skills. So let's ask Alice, tell us about some soft skills or experiences that our audience should consider developing?
So I already hit on communication, but I'm going to hit on it again and again. I am more, I interact with data scientists. I have an analyst on our team, but I am not in the analytics shop anymore. So really what I am looking for from the data scientist partners is, can they distill down what all of the science that they have used into actionable insights? And what are they seeing? They have run their models a lot of different ways. I have not touched them. They have looked at it a lot of different ways. What do they see, and how do they communicate, and how do they distill down what they're seeing, and potentially what we could use to partner to create action, whether it's segmentation or some kind of targeting or some kind of intervention for our members. I look to them to kind of be able to communicate the results of their project to be able for us to use.
Yeah, you'll find no disagreement from me about communication. I think that's one of the reasons why my job is currently so niche. It's really rare to find someone who's both competent in thinking about science, but also willing to talk to a variety of audiences about that. All right, we'll go ahead and jump over to the next question. So Bradley, I'm going to ask this of you. What are 2 things applicants can do today to position themselves to stand out?
2 things. Networking and networking, I would say probably. So like has been touched on, I think that, we opened up a role, and within a day had to close it down because there's too many applicants, right? So it's like really hard to stand out. You get thousands of resumes. And I think the best way to start getting interviews is to know somebody that works somewhere. So when I was trying to get into the field, get out of academia and get into data science, I spent a lot of time going to meetups and really in events like this, anywhere where you could find people that were that you could talk to that were working places, and try to get to know them, really work your connections. That's just so much easier to get an interview, to get a foot in. And interviews are hard too, but just to get your foot in the door, I think that's the very best thing you can do.
Yeah, I will say I went through a period in my life. I graduated with my PhD in chemistry and knew that I did not want to do bench work and wanted to get into data science. I had no earthly idea how to do that. So I attended as many networking events as possible. And what I actually found worked best were informational interviews at companies that I thought were really cool and working on really cool things. Does anyone else want to offer any other things that applicants can do today to position themselves to stand out?
One thing I will add, do your homework, which is generic advice when you are trying to look for a job. So no matter what your data science exposure, experience, portfolio is, if you take my example, if you're looking for a job in an insurance company and all you've done is computer vision, think, get curious, go learn a little bit more about the company you're applying for, to tell them, I wrote models that detected pneumonia looking at images, but this is how it could mean something to you. Just the fact that you could correlate and offer such a simple connection and explanation is going to make you stand out. Doesn't get you a foot in the door for an interview, but I would say if you get that foot in the door, networking is fantastic. Look at what events are happening in there. Every company has college campus days, they've got meetups, virtual webinars. Get out there. I think that's the best place to do it.
Agreed. All right. So next question. Michael, I'm going to start with you for this one. In terms of your own talent, what skills have you developed in the last 3 years that you are most proud of?
As I mentioned, you can learn a lot of coding for free online. So I've been trying to bone up on this program called D3, which is a JavaScript package for making interactive graphics. I'll choose that as my hard skill that I'm proud that I'm working on. But I'd say more importantly, at the time I graduated, I would have said that those soft skills like managing an inbox or how to conduct a phone interview. I had down because I had done plenty of internships and I felt that I had plenty of experience in that. But that is arguably more important than some of those hard skills like coding languages, especially working on a team, making sure that you have your inbox folders and tags, especially when the volume gets high around earnings season right now. And those soft skills, I think, are some of the most important to work on, especially in the first few years of your career.
I don't know. I would argue working on soft skills the entire length of your career is probably a must. Bradley, what's your perspective?
I guess the skills, so about maybe a year ago, I got into management more seriously after some kind of dabbling in it over some organizational changes, deciding whether I wanted to be an IC or a manager. So I don't know if this group cares about management skills, but my answer would be about that. So I think, I mean, there's a lot that is the same and a lot that is different. And maybe those communication pieces that have been touched on a lot are important pieces there, and skills that I've learned that have been helpful, probably just at a different level of abstraction from an IC to a manager role, and really trying to understand well and ask the right questions to understand what is happening in the business and what would allow a data science project to succeed or fail, and how can we really actually meet the needs of the business and the sort of particular sequencing that's going on. I think would be my answer.
Well, for the record, I am very interested to hear about becoming a manager as a new skill. I think that is totally worthwhile because being able to figure out the right people on your team for the right project, who's going to be able to work together successfully to meet the deliverables is totally key. So I appreciate that. All right. Let's see. Next question. In terms of, oh wait, I just asked that. All right. Tell us about your academic journey. What did you study in undergrad or grad school? How did you make the decision to pursue those degrees? We'll start with Uthra.
I'm a computer science engineer. Big motivation to pursue that was because my brother did computer science engineering. That's about it. Nothing more complicated. He did it. I have to do it. It was a competition. And I got recruited right out of college and started making money, which was no motivation to go back to school. So that's my journey. And I happened to be working for good companies that kept rewarding me with bigger, more complex projects. So the first 15 years of my career was just in technology, solving bigger, worse problems. I fell into data science purely by accident. The person who was running the data science and innovation team quit. And my boss's boss called me one day and said, "Hey, so-and-so quit, do you want that job?" And this is an advice, not related to data science. Always ask what the job is before you say yes. But I didn't follow that advice and I said, yes, the description looks glamorous, I'm taking it. I'll figure it out from there. That's literally how I landed this job. And the amount of learning I had to do on this side, maybe 40 hours of work and 40 hours of learning to be successful in that job, I think was that rush that still keeps me going. So yeah, that's my journey. So transition from software leadership, engineering leadership to data science. I've now run an emerging technology group for a few years, which if you think about it, everything leads you right back to data science and being able to predict things. So yeah, very, very different path. I seriously thought I was going to retire early and go back and get a PhD until the teaching gigs came along. Like, hey, this sounds more fun than going back to college to study. So that's my journey.
I mean, one would argue if you're teaching it, do you really need the PhD?
I don't want to get that confident, but I think at some point I will get a PhD.
Excellent. All right. Alice, tell us about your academic journey.
So I have a PhD from Carolina in health policy and management. So I went to after undergrad, I spent a couple years doing research and at Duke. So I thought potentially I was interested in academia, and a mentor at the time said, if you are potentially interested in academia, you need a PhD. You're going to need a PhD eventually. And so I ended up applying for that program. It was also a little cheaper than it was a little longer, but a little cheaper than the master's. And originally my research was in qualitative data, but I knew that I wanted, in order to be able to draw inferences about larger populations, I knew that I wanted to get into bigger data, but I didn't have that experience before grad school. But I kind of leveraged that experience to get into grad school and then pivoted to more econometrics. And then it was 2009, and there was a lot of funding for comparative effectiveness research. And so I was able to find a mentor with a grant and kind of piggybacked on him for a couple of years, and then tried my hand at academia for a couple of years at post-grad, and knew that was not for me. The pressure to publish and the I didn't really want to teach, and I didn't really want to publish. So I decided that that's probably not the best for me. And I also wanted to work in an industry where the data and the impact were closer together. I felt like I worked 5 years on my dissertation and learned a lot personally, and professionally, but I did comparative effectiveness in breast cancer research and imaging that published a couple papers, but no one, I'm sure, really read, and did I impact practice? Probably not. And so that's why I landed at Blue Cross, because I felt like it was a little closer to where we could make change and impact, and have been there for the last 10 years.
Wonderful. I love that. Okay, so I'm going to ask the panel a question. How many of us have graduate degrees? All right, so there you have it, folks. You do not have to have a graduate degree. You can choose to go on a different path. Okay, next question. So I'm going to open this up to the panel, so whoever speaks first gets dibs. Any valuable lessons learned in your career journey that you would like to share with our audience today?
Always ask questions before saying yes to a job. And jokes aside, I think the biggest lesson I learned when you're talking about applied data science, which is basically taking a data science predictive skills, math skills, and applying it to real world problems, you have to take the person whose problem you're solving with you in the journey of solving the problem. If you solve it and go show it to them, let's just not say you don't want to be at the end of that conversation. So applied data science means you all get on the train and you go where the train goes, or you all get off at the same time. So take your business customer along.
I 100% agree. Anyone else?
I would say don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, I think that when you, I think at almost every point in my career, I thought people were expecting me to be smarter and know more than they actually did. And I think that the best collaboration and the best learning for the project that I'm on in personally is asking right, smart questions quickly, because then you can get on the same page and make the project more successful. That people aren't going to, roll their eyes or ding you for not knowing. It is if you brought the product or brought something with an incorrect assumption, and when you should have asked the question is where you're going to get dinged.
So I totally agree. It's not the silent, smart person in the room that's going to be wanted for a given project. It's the person who's most engaged in being thoughtful and asking the questions, regardless of how simple or basic the question is. That, I think, shows a level of interest that a lot of people like to work with. All right. Michael or Bradley, do you guys have any valuable lessons learned that you'd like to share?
I would say asking questions is really important, especially when you're applying for a job. Reaching out to current and past employees. You can search past employees on LinkedIn. And even folks that are in jobs that you might not be applying for but think are interesting, reaching out on LinkedIn or Twitter, most folks will give you 15 minutes to bounce some questions off them. And the last thing is that unpaid internships are good. If someone's going to ask you to work for them, they should be paying you. So don't take unpaid internships.
All right. So Bradley, I'm going to ask you this next question. What does professional mentoring look like in the data science space in your workplace?
Yeah, so we have, I guess, like at Spotify and probably wherever you work, your manager should be doing some amount of mentoring for you, but it's also good to get that elsewhere. At Spotify, we have a kind of formal mentoring program, which I've participated in as a mentor. Perhaps in my case, it didn't go as well as it could because the mentee became a product manager rather than remain a data scientist. But generally, the program is popular and well regarded. There's also a lot of informal opportunities, which is maybe the best way. It's just finding folks that you click with, and kind of seeing where you can take it. I think people are generally happy to share wisdom and enter into that relationship. So you just got to ask.
Yeah, I will say though that this used to be a lot easier in the before times because many of us were working in the office. We could just pop by someone's office, ask them a question, and it could lead to potential opportunities. But at least for me, I'm 100% remote. How would you suggest someone like me seek mentorship opportunities?
So yeah, we've since the pandemic happened, we've become extremely distributed, and yeah, I don't go into the office anymore. But it's actually, I would argue, maybe easier because you could put time on people's calendar, and they'll show up, right, virtually. So you're right. The kind of water cooler stuff is missing, but I think it's easier to get people to meet with you.
I agree with that. Okay. So last question before we head on over to the easy retro, and this will be for each one of you, and I will start with Bradley first. We've got a time machine. Don't ask me how it works, but in 1 month before you graduate from college, what is the one thing you would go back and tell yourself about your career path?
Is this to get me to like change my path, or just like?
Would you change anything about your current path?
No.
So you would go back and tell yourself, you got it. Trust your instincts.
I'd give myself some stock tips, maybe. But I don't know. I mean, it's a weird trajectory I could have never predicted, and it was a fun ride. And I can't imagine. I don't think like current me could do any better, right? Than the sort of the random set of opportunities and things that happened to me along the way.
All right, Uthra.
I think I'd be bolder. I'd tell my younger self, just take the chance, take those chances, ask those people for what you want. It took me quite a while to figure out that if I want something, I'm the one who's going to have to open my mouth. So I definitely would tell myself, go for it. What's the worst that'll happen? They'll say no.
Fair
They
enough.
don't know you're interested.
Yeah, and actually hearing the word no is not the worst thing in the world. All right, Michael, what would you say to yourself if you were able to take that time machine?
Yeah, I guess just be open to opportunities, and no one's career path is linear. You know, especially in data science, there's a lot of room to move around to different fields. So yeah, and always be looking for opportunities that pop up because they're not just going to land in your lap.
I think if I had that time machine, I think I would tell myself, don't sweat the imposter syndrome. You've got it. All right. So now we're going to transition over to the easy retro for questions from the audience. And so please take this time to go through and upvote with the like icon, which question you highly favor and would like us to ask. I'm going to sort this by votes and see what we get. Okay, so this is for all or any panelists. How do you recommend students stay up to date with their tech skills, even if it feels a bit overwhelming with current classes?
Do a little bit every day and don't compare yourself. Everybody learns at a different pace. And if you feel like you're not doing enough, just take a step back and take a look at what you're doing. And if you feel like you're not doing enough, just take a step back and take a look at what you're doing. And if you feel like you're not doing enough, just take a step back and take a look at what you're doing. and 2 hours every week over an entire year is going to make you a much smarter person.
So I have a person in my household, my husband, who is also a bit of a data scientist. And when we were in school together, the thing that I always caught him doing was he had a little project going at all times that he would just fiddle with. And it taught him a lot about different programming skills, database development skills. He was actually trying to create a database of all of our recipes that we were cooking with. Just a random little thing for him to practice his skills on, but it was something that he was interested in doing, so he kept at it.
And if that showed up on a resume, Kira, I'm calling that person for an interview. Just
all right, duly noted. We got it. Okay, so let's see. Let me refresh the page for the next most upvoted question. Okay. What is your dream role in data science, or what is the coolest project you've seen done with data science?
Relevant to data journalism, last week, Politico went through Twitter's political contribution files and found out that they were largely incomplete and pointed that out to them. And they had to go and make a change based on that. So an example of where data journalism can have an impact on the company that you're covering.
Anyone else have really cool data science stories?
I have one from a few jobs ago. So you've all heard of how they transcribe phone calls to learn what somebody's calling about, hopefully to make sure that they don't call you again, stuff like that. The cool factor was not the data science piece, actually. It was how we built the engineering around it. So most of the data scientists on my team were leaning towards they're going to have one gigantic model that predicts possibly the 10 reasons why they could be calling. And then one of the data scientists said, why don't we build 10 different models, each of which really specializes in the 10 reasons why they would be calling, and we just daisy chain all of them. Guess which one we implemented, that it's worth talking about it in front of 400 people.
Oh my goodness.
So it was wired so well that we could turn on listening to an entire organization within 20 minutes and turn it off within 2 minutes.
Wow.
So complicated is not necessarily cool. Simple is just as cool.
Yeah, there's nothing that gets my heart going than a very elegant 2-line script. All right, so Alice, it looks like you have a pretty popular question. So I'm going to ask it. In your field, do most people have data science degrees? For this person, they're doing their master's in public health and epidemiology. So they cover a lot of different statistical software, and they're wondering if it's possible to break into the field in healthcare with that.
So I would, yes, yes. So I used to, when I was over in analytics, I did a lot of hiring for interviewing and hiring for data scientists. I would say that my criteria, particularly in interviews, is really threefold. And so if you check these boxes, then I think that would open doors. One is being able, especially with in healthcare, is being able to manipulate and clean large data sets. A lot of times this is not as clean as some other things. And so one of my questions is about the size and like how are you able to clean and manipulate large data sets and join and those kind of things. The second is about just your basic statistical analysis. And I think that epidemiology would check that box, something like that. And even not too sophisticated on stats. And then I think the enhancement is then being able, if you have some kind of machine learning or other thing to put on, but in terms of healthcare to get in your door, I think if you have a good story on those first two, and that you're strong and solid, I think that is definitely a possibility.
Excellent. And I'm also here to second that that puts you in a great position to get into the field with healthcare based off of your background. So you're well poised.
Yeah, I would say
Okay.
that it's harder, the opposite. We get a lot of data scientists that don't know as much about healthcare, and I feel like
Yes.
it's hard. It's easier to mentor the data scientist part than the healthcare background knowledge. And I think that has been one of the most beneficial pieces of my graduate degree, was not necessarily the PhD, but that background in healthcare has been really beneficial.
Okay, so this one is for Bradley. What is some advice for a behavioral interview at Spotify? Is that supposed to be informational? But either way.
Yeah, well, there are a number of interviews, as people probably that are here know. I guess our data science interviews is similar to many you might find, where there's a lot of components to it. Tech screen, a kind of take-home data challenge, and a behavioral, a bunch of behavioral interviews with different people in the team or stakeholders. So I guess I think that the advice I could give is probably generic, has been brought up a number of times. With the behavioral part is the communication, right? Being able to connect, basically tell your story, and be able to talk about the sort of the technical stuff you did, but at a high enough level that you can communicate that to non-technical stakeholders and make them understand how you could be somebody who could help them achieve business goals. Yeah, that will focusing on that will serve you well in interviews and in jobs at Spotify and elsewhere in data science.
Okay. So a question that rapidly rose in popularity for Alice: what advice would you give to a healthcare professional, in this case a pharmacist, who is good at statistics and research design, but is intimidated by coding and programming?
I would say that it depends. I mean, if you want to do true data science, then I would get more experience in terms of coursework in that avenue. But I think that if you want to work in healthcare, you don't necessarily need to have that to be able to work with a data scientist. If that answers your question. I don't draw as much now from my technical skills as a data scientist, more from those skills. Study design, statistical inferencing, those kind of things are more what I use now. And so you could, depending on what you want to do, if you want to do data science, I would get more coursework, but if you would still be attractive without it, as long as you don't want to do true data science.
All right. So this next question that I'm going to ask, while not one of the most popular, it's actually something I've wondered myself. So Uthra, what is the difference between data scientist and data analyst? Do we need to become a data analyst before we become a data scientist? What degrees are required?
I think that question is a perfect segue to Alice, what you just answered related to coding and programming intimidates me, but I love statistics, research, design. Data analyst is the perfect job for you. A data analyst is a tough one, and I'm sure there's a million people out there who will disagree with my definition. This is my definition. A good data scientist has to do a lot of data analysis. So by default, they have to be a data analyst first. That being said, there is a very big gap in good data analysts who understand research, design, and statistics. Because bulk of what you're doing as a data analyst is doing the dirty work of trying to connect the business problem with the data to a possible solution, which then you hand off to a data scientist who's going to experiment with 10 different ways to solve it and give you something which hits your degree of accuracy as required. So if coding and programming intimidates you, but you can somehow get comfortable with visualization tools, whether it's through Python or one of these big BI tools, a data analyst career is awesome. There are a lot of people who claim to do data analysis, but there are very few who do it well. So I would say go for that. And as far as degrees are concerned, I think that is one where, as long as you have the genuine interest and the eye for data, I don't think there's a hard and fast degree that you need. Anybody can get into data analysis, but again, goes back to some of the earlier comments I made. Start building your project portfolio. What data did you analyze? What did you learn? What were the insights and your journey? I think I answered all of it. You could transition from a data analyst to a data scientist, but again, you probably will have to overcome the hump of coding and programming. You have to get good at that to be a data scientist.
Yeah, I like your answer. I agree with your assessment. Okay, so this is a question for the entire panel. With layoffs bringing experienced data scientists into the employment pool, how can the audience better stand out in their application?
Unpopular answer, don't be too picky in the exact role description in this environment. If your dream job is to be a data scientist, but the only job out there is a data analyst, data visualizer, business intelligence, get your foot in the door, you will quickly grow and the market's not going to be the same. It will improve. So don't get too married to your to the job description, and if you need to take 2 different steps to get you to that, that's the way to go, because it is valid. What you said is valid. The market pool is pretty saturated.
I'm going to say one of the more interesting distinguishing features is if everyone whose application comes through my door has programming languages and similar levels of expertise, then the next thing that I'm going to look for is, well, what kind of domain experiences have they had? Have they worked in a healthcare setting? Have they worked in a hard sciences setting, or in like the social sciences, or with economics data, or, you know, just some kind of distinguishing feature that tells me if this person is flexible, if they're adaptable, if they're capable or interested in learning about a variety of different things. I tend to gravitate more toward those candidates. All right, so Bradley, next question is for you. If I have passed the SQL interview, what are the next steps for the internship interview process?
That is a great question that I unfortunately don't totally know the answer to. Our internship program changed a little bit this year. And I believe with this, that's all, this must be for next year that this person is referring to, because there's kind of long lead times on them. I don't know the changes, but I assume it's somewhat like the normal interview where there's you have to do kind of behavioral interviews and kind of a take-home challenge. But yeah, if there's any way for me to get back to people, I could circulate that information.
So this next question is technically in your column, but I think it can be asked of everyone of the panel, which is, what are your, I see this, I will call this one for an interview for a data science position. So what's your checkbox, or a couple of like 2 or 3 things that if you see it on an application, you're like, I might give this person a call?
I would say that if I can see the data, the story, like what data did you use, what model did you use, what were the insights, and then what was the call to action, or what was your recommendation? If I see that kind of, and I know that not everyone, especially more junior, would have that story, but even a smaller, just that kind of piece of taking it from, I can take a lot of data or some kind of data and then bring it all the way through into some kind of insight that could potentially be used by someone.
So in a similar vein, if someone says that they have experience to that, and then they link in their resume to their GitHub, and I can see it and like look through it, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, well done, or if it was someone's, you know, attempt at doing it. That to me speaks to a level of, oh, they have a GitHub. They took the step to go through that. And maybe they have documentation. Maybe I can see how they comment out their script. And it makes me feel like this person is a more realistic person. So yeah, definitely. How about Michael? We haven't heard from you in a little bit. What would you qualify as your, ooh, I see this on this person's application, I'm going to call them for an interview?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I might not be the best person to ask this question just because I don't involve myself in hiring at the FT, but I would say having a portfolio is especially important for data journalism. It's pretty much all about showing what you've done. And it doesn't have to be professional stuff. Even class projects, I think, you can just show, here's a finished product that I worked on, stuff you're proud of. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. I'm going to look for, oh, here's a question for you, Michael. How did you become a technical writer?
Interesting. I haven't heard described as technical writer, but there are a lot of crossover skills. I studied statistics in college. I was editor at the college paper. I decided very late that I wanted to do this, but it was around the time of COVID, and there was a lot of reporting out there that used big data sets to let folks know where COVID cases were and how it was, how the trends were moving around campus and in a state. I did some freelance projects after college. I had a short stint as an education reporter. And then I actually worked as a policy consultant for about a year before returning to journalism. So that's kind of why I say no one's path is linear. Be open to opportunities.
All right, next question I'm going to ask is for everyone on the panel.
And this will be the last question. I am
Oh,
so
no.
sorry. I know. I'm so sorry. I want to honor our time limit here. And
yes, fair enough. I'll last question. All right, for anyone that has conducted interviews, what has been your favorite question that an interviewer has asked you, or an interviewee, sorry, has asked you?
It's cliche, but the best interview question I was asked is to explain my biggest failure. Failures tell you more about a person than their wins. That is definitely something I ask people in interviews. One, they have to be humble enough to admit they failed. They have to explain what the impact of the failure was and why. 9 out of 10 times it's you, and what are you doing differently? That just tells you everything about the person you need to know.
That is a great question. Also kind of ballsy.
Yeah.
Alice or Bradley, have you guys been hit with any good fastball of a question?
No, nothing creative. I do like when they ask specifics about the job or something, some kind of project that shows that they have researched beforehand the kind of things that we're doing.
I think my favorite question that an interviewee who asked, I know are really taking this process seriously. They asked what the expectations are for the first 6 months, because then it tells me you're interviewing me as well as I'm interviewing you. So it's more of an equal relationship. You're taking this seriously, and you generally want to know, are you going to have some time to like slowly onboard, or is there a project where the expectation is you have to hit the ground running? So that is my favorite. All right, Amanda, I'm handing it back over.
thanks so much. And I do apologize, everyone, but we have some pretty fun plans for the beautifully populated Easy Retro that you guys have all created today. So thank you so much. Before you roll off, I beg of you to please take the eval. Let us know what we can do better and what content you would like to hear more about. That is very much important to us. So of course, huge round of applause for all of our incredible panelists and our moderator today. You guys have just knocked my socks off with your honesty and transparency about this, about what can be kind of a mysterious field. I think, you know, if you're an undergrad, particularly in kind of embarking on this journey for the first time. So thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing from all of you in some wrap-up materials, and I'll be in touch about that soon. Our next event that we have coming up for NCDS is next Thursday, a week from today at 11 a.m. What does a data ethicist do? We are super excited to bring in Anisha Nadkarni. She is based in the Netherlands. She is a Malaysian native, so she brings this incredible global experience to this question, and I have enjoyed learning so much about her career journey and about what she does at Randstad Global, which is the largest HR recruiter firm in the world. And we do have, let's see, I'm just answering some questions. In-person events, we do have those from time to time. I love the fact that you're asking us about those. We can talk about that, fill out the eval form, and see what we can do about that in the future. And the next announcement, there are plenty of places, as Michael mentioned, plenty of places to gain experience with data science tools. And we just ask all of you to consider checking out our Data Matters short course series that takes place this August. I think we have about 20 classes. We're offering this year, this summer, with some of the best professors from Duke, UNC Chapel Hill, and NC State, and beyond, actually. And we're just really excited to be able to offer such, you know, live interaction and great hands-on interaction with this material. It really is a great point of difference between some of the other maybe free, maybe, I don't know, different classes that are available. So do consider checking out those classes. And again, just a huge thank you to my panelists and my incredible moderator today, and all of the folks who are part of the National Consortium for Data Science, our outreach folks who brought us over 600 people registered to this event, and Savannah for staffing our slides and troubleshooting our Q&A. Everyone is important and amazing, and I am so glad all of you are here today. And I hope you have amazing Thursday evenings, and hopefully I will see you next week with Anisha Nadkarni. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.